Welcome to Newslaundry Chhota Hafta. For the full episode, subscribe because it is behind the paywall and only subscribers get access to uncut, complete content. Newslaundry Hafta is our weekly wrap of all that made the news, all that didn't, and all that should have, and all that shouldn't have. We agree, we disagree, we critique, and occasionally we beat each other up. But it's all good fun. Subscribe.
This is a Newslaundry podcast and you're listening to NL Hafta.
अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज़ लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. Welcome to the 430th episode of NL Hafta. We bring you this hafta on a very news-packed week. There was so much news, we really had to tone down the amount of headlines we had. Before we get on with the headlines, I just want to announce, which you may already have read by now, that the News Minute and News Laundry have entered into a partnership, an agreement, a collaboration, call it what you will. But the idea is to maximize each other's strengths, to kind of become a force multiplier, and to leverage the two brands and the wonderful teams both of us have into a bigger and better news entity. That's the plan. So I hope you will continue to support us, those of you who have been subscribing to News Laundry. Remember, now we have another partner, and in the near future, we will also be launching a joint subscription. So do check out the News Minute as well and see the wonderful reporting they do, and look out for some new shows on that platform, video and audio. Secondly, I will be traveling to London. So just like we had a wonderful subscriber meet in Michigan, we'll be planning one in London. If you want to attend the subscriber meet, please write to us at subscription@newslaundry.com. I repeat, subscription@newslaundry.com. And why I insist you write is because we felt really bad because these Western countries are very strict about the table capacity. So because we had almost 8 to 10 more people who showed up at the Michigan event than who had confirmed, we could not accommodate at the same table, and actually 2 of them had to go back because the restaurant said that if we overstep our capacity, our license can be cancelled, and apparently there it's very strict. It's not like, "Yaar, uncle, adjust kar lo." So please do write to us, subscription@newslaundry.com. The subscriber meet will be on the 13th of May. It's a Saturday. The exact time will be communicated to you once you have confirmed your attendance. On that note, let me introduce the panel first before I get to the headlines. Joining us on the phone line, and I'm guessing, Raga, you're in Bangalore, unless you are traveling somewhere right now.
I'm in Bangalore.
So, Ragamalika Karthikeyan joins us from Bangalore. Raga is the editor, Special Projects and Experiments at the News Minute. She's been there since 2017. She's a newsroom leader, passionate about a future where gender isn't automatically assumed to be binary. She has she has over 13 years of experience as a media professional. And soon, hopefully, we will be working together, and at least uncles like me will get to learn a lot from Raga. So welcome, Raga. Looking forward to you telling us what's happening in the action-packed state of Karnataka.
Thanks, Abhinandan.
Now, joining us in the studio is Manoj Mitta. Hi, Manoj.
Hi.
Pleasure to meet you again after a very long time. Manoj, many of you may already know who he is. I used to read his pieces in the Times of India, but other than that, I have also read his book, When a Tree Shook Delhi, the 1984 Carnage and its Aftermath. He is a journalist, an author. He focuses on law, human rights and public policy. He's worked at the Times of India, the Indian Express and India Today. He was also the founding director of the Foundation for Media Professionals, which promotes media freedom and works to uphold standards of journalism in India. Digipub tries to do the same, and we clearly aren't doing a very good job these days if you go by what we see.
No. It's a very valiant task.
I tell you, it's a tall order.
Engaging with.
Other than When a Tree Shook Delhi, he has also published the fiction of fact-finding, Modi and Godhra, in 2014. They were both critically acclaimed, and I have read at least one of them, and I would highly recommend it. And his latest book is Caste Pride, Battles for Equality in Hindu India. I have not been able to go over the book yet, but I went over the first few pages, and I'm quite blown away at the amount of things that I didn't actually know. I don't know how many more such things are there. Like the kind of laws that were proposed, passed, opposed, tweaked. But I'm sure we'll get a lot more about that with Manoj. But Manoj, before I get to the headlines, why this book specifically?
Well, we all know how much of a role caste continues to play in our society, in our politics, notwithstanding the assumption, a very fashionable one, that caste is receding in the face of modernity. but it keeps taking us by surprise by rearing its head in unlikely places like some centers of excellence, or from reports suggesting that simply because some low caste person was wearing a fancy watch or carrying a fancy mobile, he is subjected to, absolutely brutal treatment. So,
or getting on a horse.
yeah,
We-
getting
we
on a
see-
horse.
yeah.
I mean, that's a very traditional, conflict point which persists even in
Right.
the 21st century. So it shows how much we believe things have changed, but things tend to remain the same too. Now, to understand where this is coming from, why our society is still embedded in this prejudice, and why even our institutions betray, bias over and over again. I'm saying so because my original intent was actually to focus on mass violence targeting Dalits, to complete some kind of a trilogy, because my previous books were on 84 and 2002, both of
Right.
which were about communal violence. And this one was going to be about caste violence. And in this instance, there was also a law which is supposed to be a very strict one in the eyes of some draconian one, that is the Prevention of Atrocities Act. And yet, there is so much of impunity. And it's not a question of just impunity, it's also about how post-independence, there's been a far greater incidence of violence, mass violence targeting Dalits. And this is after we formally abolished untouchability in 1950 through our constitution. So what happened is, and this is not so widely recognized or understood, that there was clearly some kind of a pushback, because of the abolition and the writings and activities of people like Ambedkar. People have become more assertive.
They dug in their heels that we will not budge.
Yeah, so there was this kind of a pushback, and it crystallized in the form of these incidents. The first major instance of mass violence targeting Dalits was in 1968 in a place called Kilvenmani in Tamil Nadu, and that really set the template for the violence and for the impunity. There have been many instances after that. So I began with that, and then when I found that this was a pattern which I see over and over again, to make sense of that, I felt the need to go back to the debates relating to the abolition of untouchability, and even that didn't seem to, throw enough light on why it's still persistent. So I went further back into the colonial period, all the way up to 2 centuries, and I therefore had to widen the ambit of my book. It was no more about violence; it was about caste prejudice itself, about its various manifestations, and how it's not just untouchables who are affected by it. We all are, across the board, affected by it in varying forms and degrees. So that became the
Theme.
theme of my book.
In fact, the first line tells you that in 1795, the East India Company abolished the death penalty for a particular kind of Brahmin. Let me see. It is the Banaras Brahmin. I had no
Yeah.
idea. So Banaras Brahmin was exempt from the death penalty. Others could be killed. So yeah. But we will talk more about this. Now, Raga, just wanted your inputs, 'cause I thought of you when I was listening to the proceeding the Supreme Court on gay marriage. And I remember you had pointed out that Newslaundry had done a report on representation in newsrooms. And while that report was being presented, I think even in the text, the term third gender was used. And you said that's an offensive use of the word and it shouldn't be used. I've noticed that in the Supreme Court, even by the counsel who is actually arguing for the, same-sex marriage, they are using third gender. Is that like a thing? Is that, is there a, because I know there are certain prescribed terminology for this now in 2023. Have you been following it, and do you think they're a little, we are not up to date, even the people who are arguing for it, on the use of language?
Yeah, thanks, Abhinandan. But yes, the language around the petitions has been problematic from a lot of petitioners, lawyers as well. First of all, I'd like to say that it's petitions for marriage equality and not just same-sex marriage or gay marriage. There are a lot of trans persons who are petitioners as well. And we are talking about the entire LGBTQIA plus spectrum of identities here, and not just cis gay men. In terms of the term third gender, it implies that there is a first gender and a second gender, and perhaps a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. I mean, there is no hierarchy, right? Like
Hmm.
the whole point is self-identification, which is what is the core of trans identities. It is to say that, hey, this is me, right? Like the entire queer movement depends on self-identification. There is no like test, there is no medical test to say that you are a trans person or that you're gay or you're lesbian. It is self-identification. And in that, we are saying that, all of us are equal, all human beings are equal. So then where does the question of like first gender, second gender, third gender even come in? Right. So like I want to ask, like, cishet women, are you very happy being called the second gender then? Are you very happy being put in a second place to men? So that is extremely offensive, right? So yes, it has been quite triggering watching the proceedings, and like, and very amusing also. People coming up with like all sorts of terminology, all sorts of things. Like somebody said there's something called transformed gender, or people coming up with statistics like 99.9%
That the
of
bar
trans
councils,
people
yeah,
fall into
that.
the binary, or
Although
yeah.
I've,
So where are they getting these? Yeah. So where are they getting these statistics from? Like where are people getting these statistics from? And clearly, like people haven't understood what we call SOGISC, right? Like sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics. Everybody has that, right? Whether you're a cisgender heterosexual man or you're a transgender person, like everybody has a sexual orientation, everybody has a gender identity, everybody expresses their gender in a certain way. It's, what your hair looks like, it's what clothes you wear, it's what makeup that you want to put up, or what jewelry that you like to put on, and like, how you express yourself. Everybody has that, every single human being has that. And I don't think our lawyers and courts are like sort of getting that. It seems to be some kind of like a competition on who says the most absurd and amusing stuff. Like transformed gender was a term that somebody used. Somebody said gender is a manifestation. So I don't know.
hmm.
I mean, is it like the lawyers are seemingly, I guess, many of them are working for, uh, a case, and haven't really bothered to do their research.
Right. So, before I get into the headlines, just want to remind you that we do have two funds active. One is our NL Legal Fund. Yet another 2 IT notices were received by yours truly in the last 2 weeks. So we will be going to court yet again. For that, we need you to continue to support us. So do top up our legal fund. And this is not going to be a short battle. It will be a long one. And from time to time, whenever we need more money, we shall put up the fund again. And the second is the Press Freedom Day Fund. It's a Press Freedom Fund. We want to put together a significant amount of money to commission stories that really explore and investigate and interrogate the media's relationship with its viewers, and that come through profiles on certain bodies, on media organizations. It can come through specific stories, profiles of stringers, which we want to do a series of. How difficult it is life as a stringer in a small town when you're, supplying stories to large organizations. It's a really tough life. And we hope to also get an international perspective on some of these things and also do some data analysis. It's a longish project which we want to take 6 months to do. So do, in the spirit of Press Freedom Day, contribute to that fund, because unless you do, if you did watch the conclave that Arnab Goswami hosted, where Prime Minister Modi made a speech and made a joke which started, एक चुटकुला हम सुनते थे, एक प्रोफेसर थे, उनकी बेटी ने आत्महत्या कर ली. That is, I'll translate for our English speakers, that we used to listen to a joke when we were young. There was a professor whose daughter killed herself by suicide. That's how the joke starts. I couldn't even bother with what the punchline was. That's the Prime Minister of a country.
चुटकुला हम सुनते थे, वो जरा बताना चाहता हूँ. एक प्रोफेसर थे और उनकी बेटी ने आत्महत्या की, तो एक चीट छोड़ करके गई कि मैं जिंदगी में थक गई हूँ, मैं जीना नहीं चाहती हूँ, तो मैं काकरिया तालाब में कूद करके मर जाऊंगी. अब सुबह देखा बेटी घर में नहीं है, तो बिस्तर में चिट्ठी मिली. तो पिताजी को बड़ा गुस्सा आया। बोले, मैं प्रोफेसर, इतने साल मैंने मेहनत की, अभी भी बोले कांकरिया स्पेलिंग गलत लिख के जाती है।
And of course, Arnab giggled. And if you see the opening slate of that conclave, any company that's any company in India was a sponsor of that conclave. And it was a festival of Arnab outdoing Kalipuri in how much I can kiss the feet of the Prime Minister.
ये मेरा और हमारा सौभाग्य है प्रधानमंत्री जी कि आप आज हमारे बीच मौजूद हैं। ये तीसरा रिपब्लिक समिट है और तीसरी बार आप हमारे बीच आए हैं। मेरे लिए इससे बड़ी खुशी क्या हो सकती है प्रधानमंत्री जी। पहली बार आप 2018 में मुंबई आए और आपने मेरा हौसला बढ़ाया। फिर 2019 में आप दिल्ली के रिपब्लिक समिट में आए और आपने नेशन फर्स्ट का विजन रखा था। नेशन फर्स्ट का विजन इसी स्टेज से, इसी मंच से, इसलिए मैं और मेरी पूरी टीम आपकी आभारी है।
Now, if that is the journalism you want, you can leave it to the corporations. But if you want a different kind of journalism that is public interest, you're going to have loosen your pockets a little bit. Our subscription is as low as 300 rupees a month. If you can afford to give more, you can contribute to the Sena. But unless you do that, you can kiss democracy goodbye. That's just how it is. Now for the headlines. 10 district reserve guards and the driver of a vehicle carrying them were killed in a Maoist attack in Chhattisgarh's Dantewada district on Wednesday. This act was condemned uniformly across all parties. What was stunning is the silence of legacy media on asking really hard questions about this. Then the top Indian wrestlers returned to Jantar Mantar on Sunday and resumed their protest against Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh, the president of the Wrestling Federation of India, who has been accused of sexual harassment. He also is a BJP MP, a very powerful one. We shall discuss this in a little bit of detail, but I just, anyone from the panel want to jump in, feel free. What was stark to me was that the Supreme Court had to ask the Delhi police, why haven't you filed an FIR? The police is still reluctant to, and they say we will do a pre-FIR investigation.
No, Supreme Court did not ask for the filing the FIR. Supreme Court
why haven't
asked
you
their response, the Delhi police response.
Right.
So Delhi police, just to preempt it, so they said we are doing the preliminary inquiry, but just to preempt, if Supreme Court says so, we will file an FIR. That's all the police is saying it. Supreme Court hasn't reacted to it. So.
And in the same week, an Assam, an FIR I think has been filed against the Youth Congress leader for allegations of sexism. The allegation is not sexual misconduct, or it is just sexism, and an FIR has been filed over there. And I'm just, because one of the complainants in this case is a minor, so POSCO should kick in automatically. They don't have to wait for the Supreme Court, but the Delhi police is sitting on their ass doing jack shit.
There are 7 persons who have complained, and we still don't know officially who they are. But it is suspected that one of them is minor.
So yeah, that's the world of justice we live in, and that's what the news is telling us. In fact, the day these two things happened, Times Now was telling us the price of Arvind Kejriwal's curtains and kitchen equipment all day. Not for one story, through the day. Nothing about the wrestlers, nothing about the stuff anyway.
But I think wrestlers are still, pinning a lot of hope on the Prime Minister, so they have sought a meeting with him.
Well,
so let us see.
Then gangster turned politician Anand Mohan was released from a jail in Bihar on Thursday. This is days after the Bihar government made amendments to the Bihar prison manual. He served 15 years in jail for abetting the murder of an IAS officer in 1994. And in fact, the murdered officer's wife was on air on Rajdeep's show. I really felt bad for her. I mean, it doesn't even raise an eyebrow today. Then the Karnataka election are around the corner, and there is much noise and fury around it. Campaigning has begun to heat up. Muslim reservations have become a major issue. At a public rally on Tuesday, Home Minister Amit Shah defended the BJP government's decision to scrap 4% quota for Muslims in the state. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court on Tuesday stayed the Karnataka government's decision to scrap that quota. We even had Yogi Adityanath landing up in Karnataka campaigning. I don't know if anyone there even understands what he's saying, because I'm sure language, it's the Hindi is not the spoken language there.
उन्हें धर्म के आधार पर रिजर्वेशन देने का कार्य करती है, धर्म के आधार पर आरक्षण या भारत के संविधान के विपरीत है, असंवैधानिक है। हमने अनुसूचित जाति जनजाति के आरक्षण के दायरे को बढ़ाया है, दिव्यांग जनों के आरक्षण के दायरे को बढ़ाया है, अन्य जरूरतमंदों को आरक्षण का लाभ दिया है, लेकिन धर्म के आधार पर 1947 में भारत का विभाजन हो चुका है। भारत धर्म के आधार पर आरक्षण की वकालत नहीं कर सकता है। अन्य विभाजन के लिए हम तैयार नहीं है।
Any speeches of Yogi ji in Kannada? Raga, maybe I missed them.
I don't think so. And yeah, well, it looks like it's going to happen.
But
on
Yogi,
stage now.
Yogi spoke of the fact that UP and Karnataka have very close relations because Ram was born in Ayodhya and Bhakt Hanuman was born in Karnataka.
Was he? I didn't know that.
I also came to know only through Yogi's speech yesterday.
Hanuman was Kannadiga?
Yeah.
Damn, I had no clue. Just Madi.
So yesterday I was listening to his speech in Karnataka. So he was telling the close relationship between the two states.
So basically, the Kannadigas must, I'm going to get killed for this by someone or the other, but they must have that kind of a hero worshipping of all people from UP. I'm guessing that is the understanding. But
Manoj, another topic for
Manoj, yes, to talk about. But Raga, quickly, if you can just tell me, I saw this interview where Mr. Bommai, the Chief Minister of Karnataka, made what's his name, Rahul Kanwal squirm a little bit.
So I'm curious to know your views on the issues like Tipu Sultan, halal, hijab, which have been in the...
आपका favorite subject पे आ गया?
मेरा favorite नहीं है.
आपका ही है वो.
ना मेरा नहीं.
राजदीप और आपका है favorite.
No.
Without hijab and halal, the interview will not be complete. I had told Nagarjun earlier also. I am sure it's going to come. Anyhow,
but no, my question is,
okay,
how do you see...
क्या बात करते हैं sir?
Sir,
India today है. India आज की बात करो ना.
For you, these are not election issues?
How can it be? See, already it is settled down in the people. Forget me. You tell me whether there is a hijab issue at now.
I don't think there is.
And then?
But many people in your party only raised it.
No. They have replied. Then nobody is talking. Even the people who had filed the case also, now they are keeping quiet. Why India today is raising, I don't know.
So they clearly are distancing themselves from Hindu-Muslim hijab. Then I'm a little confused. Then is the 4% Muslim quota still a vote getter if they are clearly trying to distance themselves from a Hindu-Muslim politics? What am I missing here? Aren't the two statements kind of contradictory?
I think it's like, I mean, they've done all the Hindu-Muslim that they have to do, till a few months ago. And just before the election, I think they seem to be keeping away from it a little bit. But I don't think they've clearly not changed their politics or they've not changed their policies. And this whole, promise to scrap Muslim quota and everything is speaking to their electorate. That is something that I guess Amit Shah can come in and say, and people will still sort of listen to him and go, oh yes, this is what we voted for. So I guess, the local leaders have a little bit of restraint, I guess, just in the days running up to the elections.
Right. So probably you'll hear statements like this from an Amit Shah or a Yogi, but not from the local leader. Got it.
Yes, Bommai is not extremely popular, I guess, but he's playing his role, right? Like he's doing his sucking up to the sorry, is that the right word?
That's okay. Sure.
He's ensuring that he's keeping the BJP High Command happy and following their policies. Yediyurappa was not that kind of a chief minister, right? Yediyurappa has his own sort of views, and while it's all, I guess, Hindutva at the end of the day, but Yediyurappa is not seen as a person who is as sort of fundamentalist or
his politics wasn't about
extremist in a way.
His politics wasn't about the Hindu identity.
His politics was not about Hindu-Muslim or anything of that sort. And I mean, Yediyurappa was the guy who's even while he was chief minister, he stood up to Narendra Modi on stage on issues of federalism and stuff like that, right? So, I mean, what Yediyurappa will do next is definitely a very interesting question, right? Like he stepped aside. Has been like sort of towing the line. But we have to remember that he was also the guy who broke away from the BJP, started his own party, and then like sort of came back to the BJP. And he has definitely shown that he has, great chief ministerial ambitions. So, the question of what is he going to do next is, I think, in Karnataka politics, quite interesting. What was your other question, Abhinandan?
About Shiv Kumar, how serious a contender is he? And the Lingayat leader who actually broke away and joined the Congress. Can he break the Lingayat vote? Because from what I see, he's not that important in the Lingayat scheme of things.
I really don't know enough to like comment on that, but
Right.
I think the Lingayat vote itself is going to be a deciding factor in the election. And in terms of DKS, DK Shivkumar and Siddaramaiah, the two of them have had like a lot of like internal factional politics. But I think in the run up to the elections, they have sort of shown a united front, and they do seem to be working together rather than against each other.
How is the importance of caste the same all over now? When you talk about Karnataka, the Lingayat community is so important. Like, you have to have the Lingayats on your side if you want to win the election there. Is that just a numbers thing, or are they dominant? And where does this politics actually end? Isn't it? I mean, is there an inevitability? Should we temper our expectations of quote unquote casteless society, when no matter how much anybody tries, when it comes to election time, that's everybody's fallback, no matter how progressive that person or individual or party may want to be?
Yeah, I was struck by this report that Lingayats were demanding that BJP should declare a Lingayat as the chief ministerial face or candidate for this election, right? So where is this coming from? The irony you should not overlook. In a community like Lingayats, speaking this kind of language. Why do I find it ironic? Because Lingayat was, to begin with, not supposed to be a caste at all. It was a breakaway from Hindus several centuries ago under the leadership of Basaveshwara, who was all about, he was in the mold of somebody like, say, Kabir or Nanak, completely anti-caste. And somebody who set up this kind of, you could call it a sect, and there are some who even took the view that it is not even a Hindu community, people like Kalburgi or Gauri Lankesh, So even if you don't take that view, it was clearly something which was very progressive in its outlook, in its history. And today it's no different from any other caste. And they also engage in these kind of political bargaining and all that. And they are a huge community in Karnataka. They play a very decisive role in their elections. And they are there in Maharashtra and Telangana too, to some extent. But yes.
But when you say it was a breakaway from Hinduism, the religion, then are you suggesting at least at some point in history it was like a Buddhism or Sikhism, which was not even within the Hindu fold, although the RSS still insists Sikhs are Hindus, but Sikhs clearly don't think so. Was Lingayat community in that zone, or it was always ambiguous?
See, I'm not so much on the question whether they should be considered to be non-Hindus, but I'm pointing out the fact that if somebody is to be treated as Hindus, then even in this day and age, you absolutely take it for granted that they would have to have a caste. Right. So therefore, by default, Lingayats themselves become a caste. Because you cannot conceive of a Hindu without a caste. Right. So that's the aspect that shows how we pretend to be very modern, but in a very fundamental sense, we are still stuck in that old mode of thinking. So what is happening now is, we are very uncomfortable about acknowledging that these OBCs, who constitute, again, not the entire lot of Shudras. Shudras, again, are, as I said, they are a huge category, right? They are so huge and so heterogeneous that you have certain Shudra communities that are actually called intermediate castes, like Jats or Marathas or Lingayats or Vakkaligas. They are dominant castes. But they are not Brahmins or Kshatriyas or Vaishyas. They are part of the vast farming community and all that.
And what
right?
we refer to as Dalita outside that Varna system.
Yeah, no, but before we come to Dalits, there's this huge category, which is what the government is uncomfortable to acknowledge. Their numbers. The data is not about Dalits. The data is not about Adivasis. Their data was always collected right from the time of independence. Whenever any census was held, you collected data relating to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Why did you do so? Because you were providing affirmative action. There were reservations for them.
So you had to know how
many. So
the
point that was being made about OBCs is, since 1990, you have been extending reservations to the OBC community as well. So should you not, by the same logic, be collecting data pertaining to OBCs also? So the anomaly is they are refusing to collect any data relating to OBCs because that will be politically very sensitive. It will show that the vast majority of Hindu community are Shudras and especially OBCs. Shudras constitute these intermediate castes and these OBCs.
So it will be too large a number to justify the very insignificant in relative terms reservation
it's not just about reservations. Then it will also mean that you will have to accommodate them in political positions also, in your elections, MLAs, MPs.
It could change everybody's politics in a significant way. So Raga, you had actually come up with a template, what was it, about language usage in courts, right? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Right. So it's not about courts, but media specifically. The News Minute and Queer Chennai Chronicles, we've been working on a media reference guide for how to sensitively report on LGBTQIA plus issues and individuals. And while we were working on this, and we had planned like a glossary and it's a 20-chapter book that is going to come out soon. But when we started in 2021, this was happening parallelly to the Madras High Court. They were giving a lot of directives, Justice Anand Venkatesh, on the back of a case of a lesbian couple, the Sushma case. In that case, they had told the Tamil Nadu government that, they need to come up with terms that are dignified for queer communities in Tamil. So since we were working on a media reference guide and glossary in English and Tamil, and QCC, our partner, has been at the forefront of that conversation. So we decided to send our glossary along with other members of the community. A lot of people worked on it, and we sent it, and the court sort of accepted that and said that, this is better. The community glossary that was led by TNM and QCC is better than the glossary that the Tamil Nadu government had submitted. And based on that, the TN government then did their own consultation, and they've published a glossary in their gazette, and that's about 90%, I think, what we had submitted. And now it's been exciting to see that one of the petitioners, represented by Vrinda Grover, also gave that glossary to the Supreme Court in the marriage equality hearings.
I see. That's how the court actually came upon it.
Yes.
I see. Okay. I just want to view, do you follow American politics and news very closely? Because this has become such a huge issue.
Yes.
The whole criticism of many of those on the liberal side, but critical of the liberal side, is that you are making the culture wars an election issue to such an extent that you are losing some of the people in the middle, because you are expecting people to change very quickly from knowing the world as male and female to a complexity which middle America doesn't understand. And they're not necessarily, Trump voting Republicans or MAGA activists. I mean, I know a lot of liberals don't like him, but I really like Bill Maher because I think he says it like it is. He calls it any side out. And
I think, I'd just stop you there, because I think it's really ridiculous to say that, identities and communities that have existed since the beginning of time are somehow new or, unknown or whatever. Trans people have always existed.
No, of course.
And of course, the American debate was American, UK debates, and the Indian debates, Indian bigots trying to, copy the American and UK formats. It's really ridiculous that, you see trans women on the streets. You know how difficult life is for them. And
no, it's not about existing, Raga. They're two different things. You see, One is when it
So
becomes...
it's about existing and having rights.
Yeah, but no,
right?
just hear me out. No, just listen to what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when it becomes a political issue and a culture war, what has triggered the culture war in America to the extent it is right now? It is about high school students being made aware of certain issues, which I personally, I don't think I'm a bigot but I think if I had a child, I don't, but if I had a child who was like 5 or 6 years old, I would say that, I mean, that person doesn't have to get into these issues. Teach him ABCD, red, blue, green. The overemphasis on things that are a little more complex, just like sex education. It came into my life when I was 12 or 13. I wasn't taught it when I was 6 or 5. So I think what makes it a political issue is not whether they exist or don't exist. I think a political issue is when it becomes a part of the culture war in the mainstream media, which when one digs one's heels in, which is when, one side like kind of leverages that in destructive ways. That's the point I'm making. I'm not saying that they've never existed.
That's a very wrong reading of what's happening, Abhinandan, because what is the truth is that very young children sometimes, and again, like self-identification happens at different ages for different people, but very young children understand, like, their own concepts of gender. Like, they can sort of say that I feel like a boy or I feel like a girl. And that is not, nobody is like sort of doing surgeries except for bigots again, who, perform like corrective surgeries, so-called, on intersex children, deciding their sex and gender for them. Other than that, nobody is performing surgeries or giving hormones to children, right? Like that young.
So, Manoj, coming back to caste pride, from what I've read, the little blurb, you have focused a lot on the legislation, law, policy around caste and how that evolved or mutated over time.
Yeah.
Do you think from all the reading you've done, there is an inevitability to us having to live with this for a while more as a serious political fissures and solving for, and I'm not saying it's been solved for and done and dusted in America, but solving for racial injustice is a lot simpler than solving for caste injustice, purely because what is true for one state may not be true for another.
I'm glad you put it the way you did, because my book was inspired by what I discovered in US in the course of a fellowship I was doing there in connection with this very book, which is that, if I attempted a similar book on, say, the interface of law and race, I would have struggled to find anything substantially new to write on, because that aspect has been so thoroughly researched that it is, forget about universities, it is there in their school textbooks also. They have a clear idea in their school textbooks. They convey to students the trajectory of that great, democracy's evolution in their understanding. There was the Dred Scott case relating to transfer of a slave from one state to another. This was before Emancipation Proclamation of Lincoln, and how after that 13th Amendment, abolition of slavery, then there was a pushback in the form of segregation laws from southern states, and how in 1893 US Supreme Court ended up with a judgment that upheld those segregation laws, saying that so long as there is equality, separation is all right. Separate but equal doctrine that they came up with. Now the US took another 4 or 5 decades to understand, to realize that what is separate is inherently unequal. So all this is known to them. And then they go on to read about civil rights laws in the time of Kennedy, Johnson, Martin Luther King. All that is there in their school textbooks. They have a clear idea about this as what I call the interface of law and race. Now, when it comes to interface of law and caste, the situation is just the opposite.
All of you listening in, the Chhota Hafta, do subscribe so you can listen to the entire Hafta. We will see you again next week with the Hafta. Till then, subscribe, pay to keep news free, because when the public pays, the public is served. When advertisers pay, advertisers are served. Thank you. Goodbye.
All the Newslaundry podcasts are available on Stitcher, iTunes, and any other podcast platform.
Please subscribe to Newslaundry. Help us keep news independent. To catch all our podcasts on news, pop culture, current affairs, and sport, visit newslaundry.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. सुन लिया अफ्रीका मुफत खोरों? Not to brag or anything, but Newslaundry Hafta features in the top 50 in the world on SoundCloud in the news and politics category for podcasts. So do subscribe and see what you're missing, because when the public pays, the public is served. When advertisers pay, advertisers are served. Subscribe, help keep news independent and free. All Newslaundry podcasts are available on iTunes and Stitcher and any other podcast platform.